Episode 1. Yesterday Once More. Hello, my friend. Handshake. In the Three Body Problems novel series, a wide range of specialized knowledge is involved. So in this season, I will analyze it from every perspective I can imagine, selecting aspects from geopolitics, philosophical reasoning, economic models, legal origins, cultural conflicts, Torah metaphors, conspiracy and crisis, as well as science and, last but not the least, human nature. For the first part of our novel deconstruction, it will be about a historical background. When I was reading the volume 1 of the trilogy, especially when it comes to the Earth's Trusolaris organization, aka the ETO, I feel like deja vu. After some digging, I figured out that the ETO movement should be some fork of a communist movement in some parallel universe. Why is that? I'll show you my inference process now. The first thing is first, 99% of my sources from Wikipedia. Some are from Chinese page, most from the English, and very few from Russia, thanks to the translator. I grabbed most of their meanings, and I'll show you my digging. I've tried to balance all the position of all parties, but because there's sort of a complexity of such a movement. That was my first declaration, and here is the second. The reason why I use a diagram instead of slides is that I wish such kind of knowledge graph can bring you as much more information as possible. Because in the volume 3, the death ends, Liu Cixin had made the all-solar system fall down into a paint. So that is a beautiful idea. So will our deconstruction process or his novel. Okay, so much for the declaration part. We all know that the background of this novel is during the Cold War, and it's from the Chinese perspective. So we will review the main significant events of this amazing movement. The communist movement started a little less than 200 years ago, and the organization of these legal entities is named from the first international, second, third, and fourth, etc. German philosophers donate their theoretical foundation, and the France provide the spark. For example, the Paris Commune movement. The French ask a very important question, as a matter of fact. Where does the government's legitimacy really came from? The French Revolution pioneers, Robespierre, challenged Louis XVI pretty much like what I will translate like this. Today's browsers, for example, Chrome, will ask a website, are you legal? Same thing happened. Robespierre asking about the legitimacy of this certificate authority. Question is something like, are you self-signed? If you're an IT engineer, you know what I'm talking about for sure. The French got passion, but her rival, German, confessed a little higher introspection. Kant, once in his book, had pointed out, human beings are ends instead of meaning. It means people need to be taken care of by his or her government, not to be taken care of in the Godfather way. Hegel said a nation is hopeless unless it has people who are concerned about and look up to the stars in the space. Schopenhauer once said only the people who know the end of the book will understand the start of this book. And Nietzsche said, "Got it, Dad. Stop whining and start be a Superman." Viva la France for all the consequences he had brought about. And there goes Uncle Marx and his partner Engels. Marx quoted Hegel in his article, The 18th Brumaire of Louis Napoleon, that history repeats itself, only the first time as a tragedy, and the second was a farce. So what is a farce? Let's take Netflix, Game of Thrones, for example. The last two seasons of Game of Thrones basically is a tragedy. Now they have come again. D.B. Weiss and Benioff for the three-body problems. Those two big brains were destroying the future of this sequel. Fool me once, shame on you. Fool me, you can't get fooled again. That's George W. Bush and exactly the situation, what we're facing today. Let's get back to our narration. After Uncle Marx's death, Engels formed the Second International. There won't be too much explosive events during this time. Only some mild advice brought up by the labor union, for example, the 8-hour workday policy. You know what? The AI productivity companies should apply 8 hours a day rules too, or at least something like that. Or we are all seeking a very looming future. But let's leave that to the policymaker. Back to our story. That's Li Dazhao, the co-founder of our Chinese Communist Party, CCP for short. And alternatively, CPC sometimes. It's also acceptable. Apparently, Li Dazhao was calling for a strike. As a matter of fact, communism and Christianity were basically the two sides of the same coin. And that coin, namely theology. You see, both church and communists promised their believers a paradise that seems it can never be reached. They worship idols. They beautified their history and held their righteousness to be permanent. The Christians sing the hymn and the CCP members sing the so-called red song. The Christian religion seeker need to attend their alpha course. Meanwhile, the CCP member wannabe were asked to attend their party lectures. Christians claimed their salvation were Catholic, meaning fit for all, everyone. Marxism seems to be universal too. The church wants to tithing your commitment, and communism has the same rule too. The church told you that there were always some antichrist around, while communists are always be asked to be aware of the foreign hostile force. Their zealots did some crazy things like their armies can be called themselves crusaders or liberators. Truth be told, when Chairman Mao was a kid, he has worked for a Yali school, also known as Yale in China. And that school was mainly endorsed by the Y, the Young Men's Christian Association. You know that. Young man, there's no need to feel. I said, young man, pick yourself off the ground. I said, young man, cause in a new town, there's no need to be unhappy, young man. There's a place you can, well. As a matter of fact, YMCA had never been a big fan of a President Trump. So anyway, that was another story. I think the lyrics has so far been enough support for our idea. While the first international comparable to even just pioneering Red Coast, which was driven by lofty ideas, the Second International, similar to Mike Ivan's more pragmatic endeavor, prioritized practical improvement but seemed to lack of the revolutionary favor of its predecessor. There's no clear milestone in the decommission of the Second International. So to speak, I think the October Revolution happened in Russia sounds a death knell. But this October refers to October according to Russian Orthodox calendar, which corresponds to November in the Gregorian calendar. Right after the formation of the Soviet Union, Lenin started the Third International. But it does not last too long, Stalin ended. I think the main reason is Stalin need to calm down his war ally, Roosevelt and Churchill. The political struggle of Bolsheviks is quite bloody and crucial. Only 10 years after Trotsky's exile, the Fourth International was founded in France, which is to compete with Stalin's Third International, aka the International Communism or Communism International. Trotsky is a tragic figure. He died 2 years after the birth of a Fourth International. We'll cover more about Trotsky and his opponent story later. For now, all we need to remember is his theory about the permanent revolution. Well, the permanent revolution's rival is what Stalinism, who claimed that socialism should be in one country. That is to say, Trotsky believed that socialism should be in many countries instead of one country, which is the USSR. The problem is Stalin is facing the real war, and he needs to restrain himself to earn the trust of UK. So that is the main reason why he did not want to spread the socialism all over the world. But Trotsky, he did not take the power, so he had to make some noise about this. The Fourth International never dissolved after Trotsky's death, but it's facing a very serious problem about the fragmentation. That is why in the new millennium, the fifth was brought up, the Fifth International, brought up in Europe and Latin America. For example, Hugo Chavez. We'll cover about Chavez later. For now, we're digging into the post-war situation. Both Goebbels and Churchill use word Iron Curtain to describe the relationship with Soviet Union, or the CCCP, or USSR, or the Warsaw Pact. It is truly a great metaphor to use the Iron Curtain to describe the relationship between Europe and USSR. So number one, the curtain is separation. It must be admired. Number two, iron means fireproof. It refers to the nuke balance. NATO, led by US, should avoid facing a direct war with USSR. So in Chinese chess, it's called 将帅不见面. You cannot face the two admiral and general directly. So you will see a lot of proxy wars instead of a total war. And that's why the war names I'm gonna mention about, they are all small countries. There are tables and pictures to explain this triangular situation, relationship between USSR, China, and the United States of America. There's some common pitfall because USSR and China, they're all communist parties, so they are naturally allied. It's not true. The real situation is quite complex than that. Let's talk about the triangular one. Right after the foundation of the People's Republic of China, Stalin did congratulate them on their big achievement. But it was not until the breakup of the Korean War, the Chinese fast and firm military response to U.S. Army earned Stalin's trust. That was the triangular one. The greatest hate is usually from the deepest love. Beijing got nuclear blackmail directly from Moscow. The confrontation was on the border of Mongolia. That was exactly why Ye Wenjie was sent to. We will cover more about the details later. During the Vietnam War, China donates a lot of food and guns without military assistance. That was triangular too. So after Mao's death, Deng took office and decided to stand with the US, sidelining the Soviet Union. This process is quite painful, so the Sino-Viet War lasted at least 10 years, from 1969 to 1989. It started with a quick occupation and a fast retracement in the name of a punishment. And that is what the warfare officer Dash was so proud of in our show, our novel. But the real confrontation period was quite unexpected by almost all parties. The main reason why Vietnam stood for so long is because of USSR's military support. It served as a political penalty for the desertion of former communist allies. And at the same time, Soviets are in deep trouble with the Afghan war, which exhausted the ambitions of Kremlin. Right after that, CCP survived, but CCCP fell. That was a triangular 3. The US was trying to tame the beast untouchable Afghanistan in 2001, and it lasted at least 20 years. So let's just review the proverb of Clausewitz. War is nothing but the continuation of politics. Now, back to our timeline view. Perhaps never in all the world leaders' dreams back then, they could ever imagine a man like Khrushchev would be the first secretary of a communist party of the USSR back then. He is rebellious, impatient, and bored. Not joking about his hair, I'm saying about B-O-L-D. Domestically, he leads the de-Stalinization movement. He transferred Kremlin to Ukraine, leaving a very, very big trouble to today's world. Diplomatically, he almost caused World War III in 1962 with the US in the event of Cuba Missile Crisis. On the China issue, Khrushchev recalled all the expert and financial support, which is promised by Stalin. On the Western issue, Khrushchev claimed, "We will battle you," which promoted hostility from NATO members. So let me be frank, he rose the global anti-communism movement directly. So better dead than red was a very famous quote which echoed in the fourth film of Indiana Jones. Khrushchev's serious actions provoked Mao, who was paranoid and believed that Chinese Khrushchev could take his office anytime from anywhere, and that Khrushchev could be anyone. In 1964, Brezhnev deposed him finally. But not last too long, Mao found that Brezhnev is nothing but I quote, Khrushchevist without Khrushchev. So let me finish Khrushchev with this. He changed China and the world fundamentally. So on the US side, JFK was assassinated on 1963, and his vice president, Lyndon Johnson, expanded the Vietnam War heavily the very next year. In 1964, the Chinese national defense industry was on a fast track, and the most important news could be the two weapons. So number one, the missile, Dongfang 2nd. It was a missile. And the second, the atomic bomb, named Miss Chiu. Scientists are like red blood cells responsible for producing blood, meaning the weapons. And the red guard are more like the white blood cells, tasked with killing bacterians, meaning the counter-revolutionary. During the Cultural Revolution, the Red Guard was like white blood cells, originally meant to protect country's interests, of course, in the way they believe. However, when they got out of control, they turned into leukemia, causing tremendous damage to the whole society. In 1966, China went through a Cultural Revolution in the name of a continuous revolution, trying to eliminate all Soviet revenists. The very same year, China formed the Rocket Force, coded 二炮, which means make sure the nuclear retaliation, the second strike, happens. So, why only second strike? That is because the Chinese Premier Zhou Enlai had promised no first use in 1964. So logically, if no first use, the atomic bomb retaliation shall be guaranteed. Because if not, why bother to develop? In 1967, China tested his first hydrogen bomb. In our novel, The Injustice Trial of Ye Wenjie's father, who died in the first chapter, was also in the year 1967. In 1968, the Soviets increased a large number of troops over the Sino-Soviet border, Inner Mongolia, and Xinjiang. In 1969, China set up Inner Mongolia Production and Construction Corps, which Ye Wenjie had joined. The same year later, she was rescued and recruited by Yang Weining, her father's proud prodigy, and later became her boss and her husband. And that made her take oath and would never leave Red Coast Base. One more year, in 1970, Dongfang Hongyuan was launched. Liu Cixin, in one of his most famous interviews, committed that he believed that was his moment of truth. And so far, the 2 bombs, 1 satellite project had technically been accomplished. But back then, a lot of Chinese genuinely believed the East is red, the West is ready. But from Western point, this is far from the truth. In 1971, Ye Wenjie pressed the red button. She shot it was a failed test, but she knew that if there were any feedback, it will be at least 8 years to get the signal from the targeted star. And that was based on the calculation. So 8 years passed. She was thrilled to reply the warning signal from Trisolarian's 1379 listener. Ye Wenjie was always seeking an opportunity for a thorough, general, and global purification. So to protect her secrets without too much hesitation, Ye cut the rope of her husband and humanity. I was against all odds, she told herself, for all the greater goods. After that, she went back on her road and her destiny. She delivered a baby and named her Yangdong because the killing happened in winter. In 1982, Ye Wenjie went back to Tsinghua and became a cosmology professor. On a business trip, she got acquainted with Mike Ivins. 3 years later, in 1985, she let out her deepest secrets to Mike Ivins, who became her first apostle and angel investor. In 1987, Red Coast 1 shut down permanently. In 1999, Red Coast 2 formed on ship, and the ETO was formed too. In 2005, 2 Sophons arrived. In 2007, Ye Wenjie attempted to restore Red Coast 1, or let's say, to form Red Coast 3, luckily without success. All the elders died as martyrs and officers dashed took Ye to custody. Let's back to reality timeline. So how did USSR fall down? Ronald Reagan challenged Gorbachev to tear down this wall in 1987.
And now the end is near, and so I face the final curtain. My friend, I see it clear. I'll state my case, of which I'm certain.
The Iron Curtain is down. The Eastern Bloc nations were free to determine their own internal affairs, and the Brezhnev Doctrine was swept away to dustbin of history. The Color Revolution ruled Eastern Europe. Children were told, 2 legs back, 2 legs back, 4 legs good, 4 legs good, story over and over again. People were singing, "Go west, life is peaceful there. Go west in the open air." At the wind of a change, I follow the Moskva down to Gorky Park, listening to the wind of change. An August summer night, soldier passes by, listening to the wind of change. Very, very amusing. They were watching 007, James Bond, Rambo, Jack Ryan's films, playing Call of Duty, Red Alert, etc. One of the famous scenes was a video conference between Romanov and Dukhin. Yes, of course, Romanov's archetype of Stalin and Brezhnev. Dukhin's archetype should be Abraham Lincoln and Ronald Reagan. Red Alert was developed by Westwood Studio, and their genius ideas sparked Liu Cixin's writing. On the war-facing Plan Act, Westwood donated totally 3 heroes to the Volume 2, The Dark Forest. Why is that? In Red Alert 2, Yuri's Revenge, there are totally 3 parties, and different parties have different super weapons. For example, Allies will get the weather control, which is lightning. The Soviets get the nuclear missile, and Yuri got the mind control. So among all 3 warfacer plans, Frederick Taylor got the ball lightning, Emmanuel Diaz got the nuclear bomb, and Bill Hines got the shot imprint. Don't be too surprised about the alignment, you will see more later. But we will have to continue to cover the reality timeline. Dubček was famous for his calling socialism with a human face in Prague Spring. He led the General Revolution in Czechoslovakia, which means no blood is the bottom line. One of his famous quotes was, "If not us, who? If not now, when?" Inspiring so many people to devote themselves to the freedom and democracy. In a way, Dubček made his shot imprinted in every intellectual's mind out there in Prague back then. We will cover some more later about his story. So Eastern Hemisphere calmed down, but Western Hemisphere stirred up. From Che Guevara, Fidel Castro in Cuba, to Chavez in Venezuela, the U.S. never stopped worrying about the Latino communism movement, which Chavez called the Fifth International. Chavez is also ambitious, optimistic, and bold. I'm sorry, I try to pronounce clearly. It's bold, B-O-L-D. It's not funny, but some kind of a conspiracy hell joke. Chavez shaved because he was attacked by, it's been reported as a genetic attack. That was the fight factor of chemotherapy. So in Volume 2, where Dr. Luoji was attempted murder by ETO's genetic missile, It's actually an allusion to real-life experience of a Chavez. Chavez believed himself a Bolivarianist, which means he wanted to reunite Grand Colombia, including right now Colombia, Ecuador, Panama, and of course his Venezuela, just like 200 years ago Simon Bolivar did. Chavez swore to get away with United States intervention both militarily and economically. Zamek's protagonist radiates B. Hugo Chavez. What surprised us most is in his later day, Chavez clearly stated that he's a Trotskyist, which is totally incompatible with Bolivarianism, because Trotsky is about internationalism, but Bolivarianism is about nationalism. What can I say? Amen. I think all Chavez cared about is putting Grand Colombia into a mini-Soviet, and he really doesn't really care about what Trotskyism is really about. So, what is the true meaning of a Trotskyism? In George Orwell's Animal Farm, Trotsky's proposal was signified as the windmill, exactly like the Andrew cross, the Russian patron Saint Andrew. There are many crosses, such as Jesus crosses, Andrew crosses, Peter crosses, Nordic crosses, etc. So why there are so many versions? Because there are a lot of forks, a lot of dispute. So why so many forks? Because people are obsessed with their own hermeneutics. Hermeneutics is out of authority. It decides who is a center, who is a circle, who is orthodox, and who is a heresy. Check out the Andrew Cross in the Nestorius, who is known as the earliest heresy by Roman Catholics. Meanwhile, he is acknowledged as the Saint Nestorius in East Church. Last but not least, he sent missionaries to China during Tang Dynasty. We will cover some of his earlier Chinese evangelists later. As you may notice in the title, heresy is a hearsay. Hearsay is a legal jargon, meaning the evidence was not by saying, but by other people speaking. That's how the forks originated. Stalin wrote a book named The Communist Party History of the Soviet Union, Bolsheviks, in 1935. He put so much energy into it, trying to give a rigorous answer to all the commissars on the important questions, instead of a Bible. Yeah, there were two Katyusha grandma. Problem lies in Joseph Stalin believed himself a Moses instead of Jesus. He believed he was given the Torah instead of a gospel to his people. So in this book, in the tone of a Genesis, Stalin told every commissar whose account for political warfare, the social formation should and shall be in 5 phases totally, and you should fight for your motherland. I'm sure he's pretty proud of his brochure. My precious. But Trotsky claims their 5 phases theory could be in serious flaw.
Trotsky took Chinese Revolution as an example.
He added, the Chinese don't need to experience the bourgeois revolution state. It's not the critical path. Starting silence him with ice pick. Trotsky Chinese comrade Chen Duxiu criticized Stalin, also claiming that his Torah is a flaw. Chen stepped down as the general secretary of CCP right after that. Chen, Trotsky, Saint Nestorius, Saint Andrew, and Chavez, their all ambitions twisted and aggrieved. Stalin did not believe CCP can compete with the KMT, so he's hedging his bet on the Chinese Civil War. As mentioned earlier, Stalin did not change his view until the Korea War. Mao took Stalin's pass for a few years, meanwhile arresting Chinese Trotskyists, then turned to Trotskyism for the Great Leap and the permanent revolution. Chinese people were through a hell march. Both sides' leaders blame each other for Leninism heresy. We will cover more about Lenin in the upcoming episode. For now, our Chinese so-called industrial party were marching for the philosophy Cyber King, an idea borrowed from Plato, a screenshot borrowed from the movie Wandering Earth. Dispute leads to more disagreement. Less talk, more work. Do you think it's a blessing or a curse? I'll leave the point of view of the industrial parties to you, my dear audience, and so much for this episode. Thank you.